Hey, and welcome back to the channel. Welcome to our Tuesday night live broadcast here on YouTube. Hey, so if you are watching us for the very first time, welcome. I would love to invite you to join our growing community. Make sure to click the subscribe button. Make sure to ring the notification bell so you don't miss any of our announcements, any of our live tips and tricks, our YouTube show that comes on every Wednesday called The Biggest Transformation, where we have a cast. We're following them through a 12-week journey as they're declaring war on those pesky pounds. And so tonight, we're going to talk about weight loss struggles is what we're going to talk about. Because this was something that I think a lot of us who are overweight, we have these, we struggle in silence is really the truth. Sometimes people will talk about it, but most of the time when people do talk about it, it's making it funny or making it a joke. And I was that overweight person who didn't talk about it at all. And so I'm going to tonight, and this is going to be kind of like a two-part thing that we're going to do. The first part is going to be, what was it like struggling with my weight? What were my 5 top struggles that I had? And then in the second part, I'm actually going to talk about the 6 overweight struggles that I just never talked about. And so it's kind of going to be a 2-part series, but what I will tell you is so often I'll have these conversations with people and inside of our coaching program, and they'll be like, Carmen, I always thought I was alone. I didn't know anybody else dealt with this or anybody else felt like this, or, you know, so often we feel like we're alone on an island and we don't realize that there's other people struggling with these same exact things. So hopefully tonight, this will give you some hope that you're not alone. It'll give you some hope that just because you're here right now doesn't mean it's where you have to stay. And so without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. We're going to talk about me struggling with my weight. So I was a morbidly obese woman who topped the scale at 288 pounds. I was busting out of a size 22. I also had some size 22, 24, depending on, you know, whatever. And yeah, but I was also the chick who pretended I never talked about my weight. I put on the face of confidence. And in fact, one of the things I heard a lot from people was, well, Carmen, I just wish I was like you. Like, your weight doesn't bother you. Like, it doesn't seem to affect you. You're just so confident. I was a really good actress. I was a really good liar, is the truth. And so that brings us to my point number 1. One of my biggest struggles with my weight is I was a liar. I was a liar. And I'm a Christian woman who actually prides myself on being honest and open and upfront. And I was a businesswoman who wanted to make sure people I worked with and clients that I worked with knew what this was and what that was. And I didn't want to be misleading in any way. Like, having integrity is something that really matters to me. Being honest is something that really matters to me. And I can remember and all throughout being overweight, I never would have told you I was a liar, ever. And I'm going to show you several ways, and I'm going to explain to you, because some of y'all are like, well, I'm overweight and I'm not a liar. I would wager that all of us are overweight are liars. Okay. I just thought of another area I lied in. Okay. All right. And so here we were thinking about having a family, and here I was morbidly obese, 288 pounds. And we were talking about, my husband and I, how we wanted to raise our kids. And one of the things that was important to both of us was honesty, integrity, having a good ethical, moral fabric that we would raise our kids on. So out of one side of my mouth, I'm saying this is how I want to raise my kids. But then out of the other side of my mouth, that same day we were having this conversation, I went through the freaking McDonald's drive-thru, ate a large fry and a Dr. Pepper on the way home, and, you know, stopped at the gas station to fill up my car and threw the wrappers in the gas station garbage. Why? That wasn't on accident, because I knew if it was in the gas station garbage can, nobody would see it in my home garbage can. So here I was, a grown woman, being deceptive. And you can say, oh, Carmen, you didn't lie. I was being deceptive, which is the same thing as being a freaking liar. And now again, this is hindsight. When I was doing it, I did not see it like this. I just did it. So So, or there was, eating the fun-sized Snickers and shoving the wrapper in the bottom of the garbage can. Secret eating, which is also lying. It's being deceptive. Here's one. Come on. I know I'm going to get you all on this one. So then there was a time I would go to the driver's license office or the DMV to get my license, and they would take your photo and then they ask you, what is your weight? I was 288 pounds. Do you want to know what my license said? 226. Liar, pants on fire. I was lying to people I loved. I was lying to the freaking DMV. I was lying to, I would go horseback riding and they'd say how much you weigh. And I was like, 249. I lied to those people and I was lying to myself. So here I was, a Christian woman who held honesty up as this high level of something. And I had put myself in a position to be a liar. And that, when I realized it, really bothered me. It really bothered me. But for years, I justified that it was okay. That it was nobody's business. But inside, I didn't like it. It didn't make me feel good. It didn't make me feel like a good woman. I knew that the weight on my driver's license wasn't accurate. I knew that I went through the drive-thru and got food and then came home and ate a full dinner. I knew that I was being dishonest, and it bothered me to my core. And I never talked about it. I never talked about it. I never talked about wearing Spanx. My husband would be like, why is your butt so smooth? I'm like, what are you talking about? I would put my Spanx behind. I would never get dressed in front of my husband or anybody else. I never talked about wearing Spanx. And again, I never actually came out right and told somebody I'm not wearing Spanx. Actually, I would call them pantyhose to my husband. I'm like, they're just like pantyhose. But I was being deceptive, and deception and dishonesty are like brothers and sisters. They're one and the same, right? And so I was deceptive about eating, secret eating, binging. I can remember like my husband he was going to go to the cigar shop because he'd like to smoke cigars. And I was like, okay, awesome. You go to the cigar shop, and I'd be on my way home from work, and legitimately I would stop at Moe's and I would get naked nachos. And then I would also stop and get a Frosty, not a Frosty, I would get a Blizzard at Dairy Queen. And then I would get French fries. And then I would sit on the couch and I would eat my smorgasbord of food. I would eat myself into a food coma, and then I would fall asleep and I would get rid of all of the evidence before he got home. Which again was deception. And what I'm going to tell you is most of us that are overweight have done this. Most of us that struggle with our weight have done this. And if you have a normal weight and you've never done this, I know you're shocked right now. Like my husband hears about this and he's like, Carmen, like seriously? I'm like, yeah. Like I'll talk about it now and I'm not proud of it, but it's a part of what I did. And he'll feel so bad because he's like, I had no idea. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, why didn't you just tell me? I'm like, tell you what? That I just ate a whole meal on the way home and then came home and ate another meal, and this is why I'm fat? Like, that's what you want me to say? Like, that I lie about my weight on my driver's license because I'm ashamed of it? Like, how do you say that? And so being overweight, especially in this regard, this was one of the struggles that I never talked about. The second thing that I never talked about was that it really, being overweight really drove a wedge in between all of my closest relationships, all of my closest relationships. And when I went through number one, where I talked about the fact that I had become a liar, I had become somebody who deceived people, including myself, by the way. I deceived myself that this was okay. I deceived myself that this was normal. I rationalized, I justified to myself that secret eating was okay, that a grown woman hiding in a closet on vacation eating a candy bar was somehow normal and okay. Nothing about that was normal. And so it drove a wedge in between relationships. Like I was to the point where I would put on lingerie in front of my husband, but I was very self-conscious about it. We did not talk about my weight. He did not know what I weighed. When I would go on vacation with even friends or family, and they would want to do something like horseback ride or go kayaking or go skydiving or do any of those things where I knew that I was going to be too big for, I would make up excuses or just not want to go. So I was like the party pooper, the Debbie Downer. I snored. And I've always had sinus issues. And even when I was younger, I didn't snore loud, but I'd always breathe heavily. And I can remember as an overweight woman, like so freaking ridiculous. I can remember being in London and we were walking around London and I was rooming with one of my friends who I knew had sleeping issues. She was a light sleeper, noise bothered her. And as we're walking around London sightseeing, I'm looking for a pharmacy. And what I was going to get at the pharmacy, I was so paranoid about snoring that I wanted to get some of those breathe right strips to put on my nose to hopefully not snore. And so once the lights were off and we're in a room, I would get up and go to the bathroom in the dark, put the breathe right strip on my nose, go back to bed in the dark, and then I would lay there and try not to fall asleep before her. Like legitimately. And this was the case whenever I was rooming with somebody. I would lay there and I would try to fall asleep last. I would try to let everybody else in the room fall asleep first because I was so embarrassed that I was going to snore. And so I wouldn't like rooming with people. I wouldn't want to room with people. I'd always want to room by myself because I didn't want to put myself in a position to feel embarrassed. And I could almost cry about it right now because when you have these feelings, it's incredibly isolating. And when I look back now, it was self-isolation. I self-isolated. I put myself on this island by myself. Nobody did that to me. I created these feelings. And so often we have these internal struggles that we don't talk about anybody. We don't talk about them to anybody. We don't even, but we deal with them as a result of this extra weight that we carry around. Going shopping with my girlfriends, I never went clothes shopping with my friends, like ever, because I didn't want to go into a plus size store. And so there were several stores that I knew I could shop at and get a couple things. Like I can remember going to New York and Company and I could fit in some of their extra large things. And so when we'd go shopping with my friends, I would walk by the plus size stores and I would go into stores like New York and Company or Maurice's or things like that, because I knew that in some of their stretchy clothes, I could wear an extra large and get away with it. And I was buying something from a normal size store. So I never even allowed myself to go shopping with friends because I was so self-conscious. And so legitimately, my obeseness, my being overweight drove a wedge into every relationship that I had because I wasn't free. I did not feel that I was free to be me. I didn't feel that I was free just to be myself. And honestly, I didn't feel that I was going to be accepted for myself. And so the third area that I really struggled with my weight was our sex life. Me and my husband's sex life. And I know for some of you, this is a very taboo topic, but I get questions about this all the time because when you're overweight, first off, you're very cautious about certain positions because let's just be honest. When there's if this button on my phone right here, okay, this button's very easy for me to push. But imagine if all of a sudden there was a barrier here that was an inch thick. It's harder to push the button. If there's a 2-inch barrier, it's harder to push the button. If there's a 3-inch barrier, it's harder to push the button. And so I had a lot of fluffy barriers around all of my parts. And so everything just didn't fit together in certain ways. Like certain positions didn't work, certain things didn't work. And then not only, when you're in certain positions, there's extra rolls and there's extra cellulite and there's just extra complications. Like sex for me as a morbidly obese woman was never just Yes! Let me rip your, like how you see in the movies, right? You're ripping each other's clothes off and you're just going at it without caring in the world. No, like sex was very thought out. Intimacy was very thought out. Lingerie was very thought out. Every positioning was very thought out. And so it took all the fun, I'm not going to say all the fun, but it took a lot of the fun out of it. Being self-conscious, wondering if my husband was going to be attracted to me, wondering if he saw the rules or if I laid in just the right way, if everything was like he didn't know I was overweight. Who did I think I was kidding? But man, I can remember there was a time where it was our anniversary and my husband had bought me lingerie. And he had these 3 packages sitting there. And of course, you know, he was about 50 pounds overweight, but he was never severely overweight. And he had bought me 3 different pieces of lingerie and they were one size fits all. Well, you know, when you're morbidly obese, one size fits all doesn't include you. And so he had bought all these one size fits all lingerie pieces and he gives them to me. And of course I'm like, oh, thanks, babe. He's like, you gonna put them on? I'm like, no, not right now. Because I'm already thinking, no, these aren't gonna fit me. They're not gonna fit me. No, I'm not gonna put them on right now, but I'm too embarrassed to be like, babe, these are the wrong size. I don't fit in one size fits all. You have to go to the plus size lingerie section if you want it to fit me. And so he leaves the room and I end up trying them on. They don't fit. So I put them down in a drawer. Not gonna talk about them. We go most of the rest of the vacation. We don't talk about them. I don't put on the lingerie. We leave the vacation. We wind up getting in a fight. Because he bought me this lingerie and now he's thinking, I just don't want to wear it. It had nothing to do with that. But I never communicated. How is this non-morbidly obese man supposed to know that his morbidly obese wife didn't fit in one size? I know some of y'all are like, he should know, Carmen, he should know, but he's a guy. Like, he didn't buy my clothes. I cut all the tags out of my clothes. He didn't know what size I wore. And so, like, it was a huge struggle inside of our intimacy, inside of our relationship, barriers that it put up. It just, and what I can tell you is I wasn't aware at how much, because I had gotten so used to so many of these things. I had become so used to that I didn't realize the wedge that it put in between my husband and I in our sex life. I didn't realize the wedge this put between me and my friends and my family. I didn't realize how deceptive I was until I got on the other side of it. Until I lost the weight and I was like me and my friends could just talk about anything. I was no longer self-conscious about going to eat or about shopping or about sleeping. I wasn't laying in a bed praying to God, please don't let me snore tonight. I had no clue until I got on the other side of it how much I struggled with this burden of weight, because I was the overweight chick that had convinced myself, like, I would get dressed and go out and thought I looked good. I didn't think I looked, sometimes you'll see people that struggle with their weight and they just don't try and they look frumpy. I didn't think I was that overweight woman. I was very productive. I had a multi-million-dollar business. Like, I wasn't just sitting on the couch eating bonbons. I was a very productive woman, even as a morbidly obese woman. And so, but when I got on the other side, when I started looking back, it was like, wow. The fourth one is day-to-day stresses. Day-to-day stresses. Like, I would have told you then that and even in our sex life, I would have told you we had a good sex life. At me or morbidly obese, we still did it on the regular basis, but I didn't realize all the stress that went into it, all the anxiety, all the positioning, all the not fun, all the controlling that I did. The day-to-day stress, checking in on an airplane, a simple task of hugging somebody. Like, I knew I was fluffy. I knew that I was well endowed up here. And so hugging somebody felt awkward, right? So when I'd go to hug somebody, I would either try to go under or I would try to go over, because hugging when you're fluffy, hugging can feel a little like, especially if it's one fluffy person hugging another fluffy person, like it felt weird. So hugging, I would go to hug someone and I would overthink it. Checking in on an airplane, God forbid I didn't check. I mean, I would check in 24 hours beforehand, and I would always try to get a window. If I couldn't get a window, I would get an aisle. I would not want the window seat, because if I was in a window, I could spill into the window. If I was in an aisle, I could spill into the aisle. But I didn't want to be stuck in the middle, spilling into other people's seats. And the entire flight, you keep your legs like straight. You keep them flexed. You kind of almost on your tippy toes, because you don't want your thigh fat to spill into the next seat. You don't want your thigh to touch the other person. And sometimes you still can't help it. And I can remember one of the last times we were flying, I'm explaining this to my husband, and he's like, really? Like, that's a thing? I'm like, yes, I would spend the entire flight with my legs upright so I wouldn't touch the other person. Grocery shopping, the day-to-day stress that went into grocery shopping, buying any clothing, trying to go find a dress that fits me. And you have to buy 5, 6, 10 dresses. You got to spend the whole day trying on dresses to find something. Again, huge boobs, because I'm overweight, and I already had big boobs before I was overweight. And so giant boobs, 288 pounds, and just not finding stuff that fits. I went wedding dress shopping by myself because I didn't want to go through the embarrassment of taking my entire family and friends with me and not finding something that fits. Getting dressed, the stress of getting dressed, going through several outfits, putting on the Spanx, squeezing myself into them, going through shirts, all the layers, because when you're fluffy, layers makes everything look smaller. Bathing suit shopping. Going to the beach, taking the swimsuit, taking the cover up off. The day-to-day stress that went into being overweight. And again, I did not realize it was even that stressful until I got on the other side of it, until I lost the weight. And I lived a life where I never, like on a daily basis now, I don't even think about my weight. My weight doesn't affect me. It doesn't even occur to me. I had no idea how busy my mind was with these struggles, how active my brain was thinking about this stuff. It doesn't even, and how free it is now, how much better it feels, how much less stressed I am without having this weight. The last and final one, when I was making out my top 5 things that I struggled with my weight being at 288 pounds, was just being self-conscious. Just being self-conscious. Even being in photos. Like, photos, you're always paranoid that you're going to be the biggest one. And so it helps if you're in a photo, if you're the person in the middle. So when you're taking photos, you're like angling yourself in the middle. You're putting your purse in front of you. Self-conscious when you're getting dressed. Self-conscious when you're hugging people. Self-conscious on the beach, self-conscious when you're at a restaurant eating, just self-conscious in general. And sometimes what it feels like is you feel like you're in a cage. You feel like you're trapped. You feel like you're not free to be yourself. And 2 things I want to say before we end is, if you're overweight right now and you're struggling with your weight and you relate to any of these things I said, the first thing I want to say to you is your weight doesn't define you. Stop pretending. Everybody around you already knows you're overweight. Be you. Your weight is just a number. It doesn't define your worth. It doesn't make you who you are. You are valuable. You are worthy, even if you have a weight problem. And the second thing I want to say is, if you're not happy where you're at, and you're not happy with the reflection staring back at you in the mirror, then change it. Change it. You don't have to stay here. You don't have to stay there. Now, if you're happy with your weight and you're happy with your body, and you look in the mirror and you're like, I don't want to change anything, then that's fine. But I'm guessing that's not most of you. And so if you're living in a body and you know right now something deep down inside of you, there's more to life. You look at before and after photos and you long for the day, you hope for the day, you pray for the day where that will be you. if you know that your weight puts extra stress into your life, it's affected your sex life, it's affected your confidence, it's affected the closest relationships to you, it affects you as a mother or father because you don't have the energy. You know, I thought I was a productive person before I lost the weight. Today, I run circles around that girl, the girl I used to be. And I was productive. Now it's a whole nother level. But you don't have to stay there. You don't have to stay there. You've never gotten too far off track to turn the ship around. Even for those of us that have struggled with our weight most of our life. Even so much to the point where some of us have convinced ourselves that we're big boned. It's just how our people are. There's another way. And you don't have to do it by yourself. And if you've struggled with any of these things, but the first step is you believing. You saying I'm worth it. You saying that as a grown woman or a grown man, me having these struggles isn't normal. I mean, it is normal. All of us fluffy people do it. But life doesn't have to be like that. Don't let that be your normal. Don't let these struggles be your normal. Create a new normal. Create a new standard. Because you're worth it. You're worth it. And so we're going to be back with another one where I'm talking about some of the weight loss struggles that I never talked about when I was. And if you have any struggles, I would love to hear about them in the comments. Maybe you're like, I struggle with that too. Or, oh my gosh, Carmen, you're reading my mail. We're like twins. It's when you start talking about them, there's a freedom that comes with that. And I think it's the first step in moving beyond it. Is being real with where you're at, with where you're starting. And so thank you so much for watching tonight. And if you haven't, make sure to smash the like button, leave us a comment down below, and we will see you back same time, same place next week.